Naomi Lewis stood alone in the sleek mirrored elevator of Harris Corp, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The digital display ticked upward at 3738, each number pulling her closer to the executive floor, a place she'd never set foot in during her 3 years as an administrative assistant. At 28, Naomi had carved out a quiet but steady place for herself in the company, her sharp mind and relentless work ethic earning her respect among colleagues. But today, something felt wrong. The summons to meet Eleanor Harris, the formidable matriarch and mother of CEO William Harris, had come without explanation. Naomi's fingers fidgeted with the hem of her tailored blazer, a second-hand find she'd painstakingly ironed that morning. This is it, she thought. They're going to fire me. The rumors had been swirling for weeks. Whispers in the break room, sidelong glances at company events, hushed conversations that stopped when she entered. Naomi and William. William and Naomi. It wasn't just that she was his assistant, often seen at his side during meetings or galas, her clipboard in hand, her smile professional, but warm. It was that she was a black woman in a world of glass ceilings and unspoken rules. And he was the white billionaire CEO, whose every move was scrutinized. Their chemistry, unspoken but undeniable, had sparked gossip. A laugh shared over a late-night report, a moment when their hands brushed while passing a coffee cup, the way his eyes lingered, just a second too long. Naomi had tried to keep it professional, to ignore the way her pulse quickened around him. But the rumors didn't care about her restraint. And now, she was certain they'd caught up with her. The elevator dinged, and the doors slid open to reveal the 40th floor, a realm of polished marble and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed New York's glittering skyline. The air felt different up here, colder, heavier, as if it carried the weight of decisions that shaped empires. Naomi stepped out, her low heels clicking softly against the floor. She smoothed her skirt, her dark curls pulled back into a neat bun, and took a deep breath. Stay calm, she told herself. You've faced worse. She hadn't always worked in skyscrapers. Growing up in a small Brooklyn apartment, Naomi had clawed her way through college on scholarships and late-night diner shifts, her dreams fueled by sheer grit. She'd faced skepticism before professors who assumed she'd drop out, bosses who overlooked her for promotions, strangers who questioned her place in rooms like this. But she'd proven them wrong, one spreadsheet, one late night, one perfect presentation at a time. Harris Corp was supposed to be her big break, a chance to rise beyond the copy room. And William Harris, with his sharp mind and quiet kindness, had made her believe she could. Until now. At the end of the hallway stood Eleanor Harris, a vision of elegance in a tailored cream suit, her silver hair swept into an impeccable chignon. Even at a distance, her presence was commanding, her sharp blue eyes assessing Naomi with a cool detachment. Eleanor was the kind of woman who didn't speak unless something needed fixing, and today, that something was Naomi. Miss Lewis, Eleanor said, her voice smooth as silk, but edged with steel. Follow me. Naomi swallowed hard, her throat dry, and obeyed. They entered a small, elegant lounge off the main boardroom, a space clearly not meant for staff like her. The door closed with a soft click that echoed like a gavel in Naomi's ears. She stood, heart racing, waiting for the verdict. Eleanor walked to the window, her back to Naomi, gazing out at the city as if it belonged to her. I assume you've heard the rumors. Eleanor began, her tone measured, not turning around. About you and my son. Naomi clasped her hands tightly in front of her, forcing her voice to stay steady. Yes, ma'am. But they're not true. I've always kept things professional with Mr. Harris. Eleanor turned slowly, her eyes narrowing. Professional, she repeated, as if testing the word. You think it's professional to linger at his side at every gala, to smile a little too warmly at his remarks, or perhaps to look at him the way you do, as if you're more than just his assistant. Naomi's cheeks flushed a mix of embarrassment and indignation. I didn't mean to give that impression, she said, her voice catching slightly. I respect William, Mr. Harris, and my role here. I've worked hard to earn my place. Eleanor stepped closer, her heels silent on the plush carpet. You seem like a capable young woman, Naomi. Determined, diligent. I can see why William might take a liking to you, but he is the CEO of a company his father built from nothing. He cannot afford distractions, especially not one with no name, no connections. And she paused, her gaze sweeping over Naomi, a background that invites scrutiny. The words stung sharper than Naomi expected. She knew what Eleanor meant. In this world of old money and older prejudices, Naomi's identity as a black woman made her an easy target. The rumors weren't just about an office romance. They were laced with insinuations that she was out of place, a gold digger, a climber who didn't belong. She straightened her spine, refusing to let the tears prickling her eyes fall. If you want me to resign, I will, she said quietly. I won't cause trouble. I never wanted any of this. Eleanor tilted her head, studying her. Good, she said. I believe you mean that. Before Naomi could respond, the door opened. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. The steady, confident rhythm of his footsteps was unmistakable. William Harris. Her chest tightened. Of all the moments, why now? Mother William said, his voice calm but firm. Naomi. She turned to face him, instantly regretting it. He looked exhausted, his steel blue eyes shadowed with fatigue, as if he'd been wrestling with something heavier than the company's quarterly reports. His dark suit was impeccable, but his tie was slightly loosened, a rare sign of vulnerability. He crossed the room, stopping just close enough for Naomi to catch the faint scent of cedar and soap on his skin. I asked Naomi to be here, Eleanor said coolly. She deserved clarity. I agree, William replied, his gaze locking onto Naomi's. Something passed between them, unspoken, electric, real. But not like this. He turned to his mother. Naomi isn't a distraction. She's the reason I've been able to lead this company with purpose these past 6 months. She's not just an assistant. She's brilliant, strategic, and more dedicated than anyone in this building. Eleanor blinked, caught off guard. William? No. He interrupted, his voice steady but resolute. You think I don't see people? That I keep my personal and professional lives separate? I do. But not her. Naomi's breath caught. The room seemed to shrink, the air thick with tension. And then, in a move that stunned both women, William stepped closer to Naomi, his hand gently finding hers. Before Eleanor's astonished eyes, he leaned down and pressed a soft, deliberate kiss to Naomi's forehead. She's the one, he said, his voice low but unwavering. The silence that followed was deafening. Naomi stood frozen, her mind spinning, her heart a chaotic mix of fear and warmth. Eleanor's lips parted, but no words came. For one impossible moment, it was just William and Naomi, the weight of the world fading away. Then he pulled back, his hand still holding hers, and said, You don't have to leave, Naomi, not unless you want to. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Her mind was a whirlwind. His touch, his words, the audacity of it all in front of his mother. Eleanor's expression was unreadable, her eyes flickering with something Naomi couldn't name, disapproval, surprise, or perhaps a grudging curiosity. Before anyone could break the silence, the door opened again. Greg Williams, head of PR, burst in his face, flushed. There's a problem downstairs. he said, his voice tight. The press, they know about her. And they're not playing nice. Naomi's stomach dropped. The rumors had escaped the office walls, and now the world was watching. The lounge felt smaller now, as if William's declaration had sucked the air from the room. Naomi stood rooted to the spot, her hand still tingling from where his fingers had held hers. The faint warmth of his kiss lingered on her forehead, a bold gesture that had shattered the professional boundary she'd so carefully maintained. Eleanor Harris remained by the window, her posture rigid, her silence louder than any reprimand. Greg, the PR manager, hovered near the door, his tablet clutched like a shield, his eyes darting between William and Naomi. The news he'd just delivered about the press, swarming downstairs, hung heavy, a storm cloud ready to burst. Naomi's mind raced. She'd spent years building a reputation at Harris Corp, her work meticulous, her presence unobtrusive. But now, the whispers that had haunted the break rooms had spilled into the open, and the world outside was ready to dissect her. She could already imagine the headlines, the kind that didn't just question her professionalism, but her worth, her place in a world of wealth and power. William's hand brushed hers, again a subtle anchor pulling her back to the moment. "We need to move," Greg said, his voice clipped. "The reporters are in the lobby and they've got photos, nothing scandalous. Just you two at the gala last week talking. But the captions are already spinning it into something else." William's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. Spinning it, how? Greg hesitated, glancing at Naomi. "They're calling it an office romance. Words like favoritism and opportunist are trending. They're digging into her background, her role, even her performance reviews." Naomi's stomach churned. She knew what this meant. The press wouldn't just see her as William's assistant. They'd paint her as a climber, someone who'd leveraged charm to rise through the ranks. She'd seen it before, colleagues at past jobs whispering about her ambition, as if her drive was somehow less legitimate, her success less earned. She straightened, forcing her voice to steady. "I can handle it. I'll draft a statement, clarify that nothing inappropriate happened." "No," William said, his tone firm, but not harsh. "You don't owe them an explanation. This isn't about you defending yourself. It's about us controlling the narrative." Eleanor finally spoke, her voice cutting through like a blade. "Control. You've just thrown gasoline on a fire, William, kissing her in front of me, declaring her the one. Do you have any idea what this looks like to the board, to the investors?" William turned to face his mother, unflinching. "It looks like the truth. I'm done hiding how I feel to appease people who don't care about the company's future, only its image." Eleanor's eyes narrowed, but there was a flicker of something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or begrudging respect. "You're risking everything your father built for a moment of sentiment. I'm risking it for a future I believe in," William countered. "And Naomi is part of that." Naomi's chest tightened. His words were a shield, but they also placed her at the center of a battle she hadn't chosen. She wanted to speak, to assert herself, but the weight of Eleanor's gaze and the looming press frenzy kept her silent. She wasn't just fighting for her job now. She was fighting for her identity, her right to be seen as more than a headline. Greg cleared his throat. "We have a press briefing scheduled in an hour. The board's already asking for a response. If we don't address this now, the story will spiral." William nodded, his eyes meeting Naomi's. "Then we face them together. No denials, no apologies, just the truth." Naomi's heart skipped. Together, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, "William, this could ruin you." He gave her a small, steady smile. "It won't. Not if we do this right." Eleanor exhaled sharply, turning back to the window. I hope you know what you're doing, William, because once you step into that press room, there's no going back. As they left the lounge, Naomi felt the weight of every step. The hallway stretched endlessly, the marble floors reflecting her silhouette like a distorted mirror. She caught her reflection's shoulders, squared, chin up, but her eyes betrayed the fear she couldn't shake. William walked beside her, his presence steady but not overbearing. She wondered how he could be so calm when the world was about to tear them apart. In the elevator, Greg tapped furiously on his tablet, muttering about trending hashtags and media outlets. "They've got a photo of you adjusting his tie at the gala," he said to Naomi. "It's innocuous, but the caption says more than an assistant. They're framing it like you've been planning this." Naomi's throat tightened. "I was just doing my job." "I know," William said, his voice low, "and we'll make sure they know it too." The elevator doors opened to a private corridor leading to the press room. Naomi could already hear the hum of voices, the click of cameras, the restless energy of reporters hungry for a story. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out, expecting a message from her friend Jenna, who'd been texting her support all morning. Instead, it was an unknown number. The message was simple, chilling: "Leave him, or I'll tell them about Chicago." Her breath caught, her fingers trembling as she stared at the screen. Chicago. A chapter she'd buried deep, a summer internship gone wrong, a memory she'd fought to forget. She hadn't told William about it, not the full story. How could she when it still felt like a wound that hadn't healed? She slipped the phone back into her pocket, her heart pounding. William noticed his brow furrowing. "Naomi." "What's wrong?" She forced a smile, shaking her head. "Just nerves. I'm fine." He studied her for a moment, his eyes searching, but he didn't press. "You don't have to do this alone," he said softly. "I'm right here." She nodded, grateful, but terrified. The press room loomed ahead, a wall of glass doors separating them from the chaos. Greg handed William a printed statement. "This is the draft. It's neutral, professional. Stick to it, or we risk opening a dozen new questions." William glanced at the paper, then folded it and tucked it into his suit pocket. "I'll speak from my perspective," he said. "Naomi doesn't need to prove anything. She's here because she belongs here." Naomi opened her mouth to protest. She wanted to speak for herself, to reclaim her voice. But the look in William's eyes stopped her. It wasn't control. It was protection, a promise that she didn't have to carry this alone. Still, the message on her phone burned in her mind, a secret she couldn't ignore much longer. As they approached the glass doors, a woman stepped into the corridor, her heels clicking with purpose. Marissa Dean, a former investor and board advisor, her smile sharp as a blade. Naomi recognized her instantly. She'd seen her at company events, always poised, always watching. Marissa's eyes flicked to Naomi, then to William, her expression unreadable. "Quite the day," Marissa said, her voice smooth. "I didn't expect to be back here for this." William stiffened, but kept his tone even. "You're always welcome, Marissa. You're still an advisor." Her smile tightened. "For now." Her gaze settled on Naomi, appraising. "So you're the one everyone's talking about. Impressive, climbing so high so fast." Naomi held her gaze, refusing to flinch. "I earned my place," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Marissa's lips curved, but there was no warmth in it. "Of course you did. But perception is everything, isn't it?" Before Naomi could respond, Greg gestured toward the press room. "We're on in 5. Let's go." William touched Naomi's arm lightly, a silent reassurance. "Ready?" She nodded, though her heart screamed otherwise. As they stepped toward the doors, her phone buzzed again. Another message from the same unknown number. "You don't belong with him," Chicago will prove it. Naomi's blood ran cold, but she kept walking, her resolve hardening. Whatever was coming, she wouldn't let it break her. The press room buzzed with restless energy, a hive of cameras, microphones, and reporters, poised like hawks. Naomi stood just behind William, her hands clasped tightly to steady their trembling. The glass doors had closed behind them, sealing them into a space where every word, every glance would be dissected. The anonymous text messages, "Leave him, or I'll tell them about Chicago, and you don't belong with him." Chicago will prove. It burned in her mind, each word a needle pricking her resolve. She hadn't told William about them, not yet. The weight of her past, buried for years, felt like it might crack open at any moment. William adjusted the microphone at the podium, his posture calm, but his eyes sharp, scanning the room. The reporters quieted their notebooks, open cameras rolling. Naomi felt the heat of the lights, the weight of dozens of eyes on her. She'd spent years fading into the background at Harris Corp, her work silent but flawless, organizing schedules, drafting reports, anticipating needs before they were spoken. Now she was the story, and the scrutiny was suffocating. "Good afternoon, William," began, his voice steady, cutting through the hum. "Thank you for coming. I'll be brief. Recent speculation has suggested an inappropriate relationship between myself and Naomi Lewis, my assistant. I'm here to set the record straight." Naomi's heart pounded. She'd wanted to speak to defend herself, but William had insisted on taking the lead. "Let me handle the storm," he'd said. But this wasn't just his storm, it was hers too. She shifted slightly, her shoulder brushing against his, a silent reminder that she wasn't invisible. "Naomi Lewis is not a scandal." William continued, his tone firm, but not defensive. "She's an exceptional professional, who has earned her place through dedication and skill. Yes, I care about her deeply. That's personal. But it doesn't diminish her contributions or the respect she's earned from this company." A murmur rippled through the room. Pens scratching, cameras clicking. Naomi scanned the crowd, catching a mix of expressions: curiosity, skepticism, a few nods of approval. One reporter, a woman with sharp eyes and a tablet, raised her hand. "Mr. Harris, can you confirm the nature of your relationship? Are you saying it's purely professional?" William didn't hesitate. "I'm saying it's real, and it's separate from her role here. Naomi's work speaks for itself. Check the company's performance metrics, the projects she's streamlined, the deals she's helped close. That's what matters." Naomi's chest tightened, a mix of gratitude and fear. His honesty was bold, but it was also a gamble. The truth could humanize them, or it could fuel the fire. Another reporter, a man with a smug grin, stood. "Miss Lewis, there's talk of an incident in your past, something from Chicago. Care to comment?" The room seemed to tilt. Naomi's breath caught the word Chicago, slicing through her like a blade. The anonymous texts flashed in her mind, their threat now public. She felt William tense beside her, his hand twitching as if to reach for her. She couldn't let him fight this alone. Stepping forward, she gripped the podium's edge, her voice steady despite the chaos inside. "My name is Naomi Lewis," she said, her eyes locking onto the reporters. "I don't know what rumors you're referring to, but I'll tell you this. I've faced challenges like anyone who's fought for their place in a world that doesn't always make room for them. If you're asking about my past, I'll say I've made mistakes, learned from them, and kept moving forward. That's who I am." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over the crowd. She didn't mention Chicago directly. She couldn't not, without knowing who was behind the texts or what they had. But her response was raw, unapologetic. and it shifted the air. A few reporters exchanged glances, their skepticism softening. William gave her a subtle nod, pride flickering in his eyes. The press conference ended without further questions about Chicago, but Naomi knew it wasn't over. As they stepped away from the podium, Greg hustled them toward a side exit, his face tense. "That was bold," he whispered. "The internet's already split, half calling you a power couple, half saying it's a PR disaster. We need to monitor this." William guided Naomi through the corridor, his hand light on her back. "You were incredible," he said softly. "You didn't have to answer that question." "I did," she replied, her voice low. "If I don't speak for myself, they'll write the story for me." They reached a private office away from the press's prying eyes. Greg closed the door, already scrolling through his tablet. "We've got a problem," he said. "A blog just posted a leaked document, your employment file. Naomi. It mentions a confidential incident from your internship in Chicago. No details, but it's enough to stir things up." Naomi's knees weakened, but she caught herself against the desk. How did they get that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. William's expression darkened. Someone with access. HR maybe. Or someone higher. Naomi's mind raced. The Chicago incident, a summer internship gone wrong, a colleague who'd crossed boundaries, a complaint she'd filed only to be silenced by a company that valued reputation over justice. She'd signed a non-disclosure agreement to keep her recommendation letter, to keep her career alive. She'd thought it was behind her, but now it was clawing its way back. "We can issue a denial," Greg suggested. "Say the document's out of context." "No," Naomi said, her voice firmer now. "Denying it makes it look like I'm hiding something. I need to know who's doing this, and why." William nodded, his eyes searching hers. "We'll find out. I've got security pulling access logs. Whoever leaked this, they're not just targeting you, they're targeting us." Before Naomi could respond, her phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. "You can't outrun Chicago. Tell him, or I will." Her heart sank. She slipped the phone into her pocket, her fingers trembling. William noticed his brow furrowing. "Another one?" he asked. She nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "It's nothing I can't handle." "Naomi," he said, stepping closer, his voice gentle but insistent. "You don't have to handle it alone. Tell me." She hesitated, the weight of her secret pressing down. She'd spent years rebuilding herself after Chicago, proving her worth through late nights and flawless work. But the texts, the leak, the press, they were unraveling everything. She took a deep breath, meeting his gaze. "It's about something that happened years ago. An internship. I reported someone, and it didn't go the way I hoped. I thought it was over, but someone's bringing it back." William's expression softened, but there was a fire in his eyes. "Who?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But they're not just after me. They want to hurt you too." Greg interrupted his tablet, lighting up with notifications. "We've got a hit. The document was accessed from a boardroom terminal last night. Only a few people have that kind of clearance." William's jaw clenched. Marissa. Greg nodded. Her login was active. "But there's no direct proof she sent it to the press." Naomi's mind flashed to Marissa Dean's sharp smile, her cryptic words in the corridor. "Perception is everything. This wasn't just a leak, it was a calculated move." "She's been watching us," Naomi said quietly. She knew this would hit hard. William turned to Greg. "Get security to dig deeper. I want every email, every login, every trace." As Greg hurried out, William faced Naomi, his voice low. "Whatever this is, we'll face it together. No more hiding." Naomi nodded, but the texts echoed in her mind. Chicago wasn't just a memory, it was a weapon, and someone was wielding it with precision. Naomi sat in the quiet of William's private office, a sanctuary tucked away on the 42nd floor of Harris Corp, far from the press room's chaos. The city skyline sparkled through the windows, but her eyes were fixed on her phone, the latest anonymous text searing into her mind. "You can't outrun Chicago. Tell him, or I will." Her fingers hovered over the screen, tempted to delete the message to bury it, like she'd buried the memory of that summer internship. But the leak of her employment file mentioning a confidential incident had already cracked open the door to her past. Someone likely Marissa Dean was pulling the strings, and Naomi knew silence wasn't an option anymore. William stood across the room, his sleeves rolled up, speaking in hushed tones with Greg, who was still sifting through security logs to trace the leak. The press conference had bought them some goodwill. Naomi's candid response had resonated with some reporters, and a few blogs were already praising her poise. But the leaked document had shifted the narrative. Social media was ablaze with speculation, some calling her a victim, others labeling her a liability. The weight of it all pressed against her chest, but she refused to let it crush her. She stood smoothing her skirt and crossed to the window. The city below pulsed with life indifferent to her turmoil. She thought of her first day at Harris Corp, how she'd stood in the lobby awestruck by the towering glass and steel, promising herself she'd prove she belonged. Now that promise felt fragile, threatened by a past she couldn't control. William ended his call and approached his presence, steady but not overbearing. "We're narrowing it down," he said. The terminal Marissa used was accessed after hours, but the data was sent to an encrypted email. "It'll take time to crack." Naomi nodded, her voice tight. "She's not just leaking files. She's building a story, one where I'm the villain." He studied her, his eyes searching. "You're not a villain, Naomi. You're the strongest person I know." She gave a small, bitter laugh. "Strong enough to survive this." "The whole world's reading about my past, William. They're not just questioning my job. They're questioning me." He stepped closer, his voice low. "Then let's give them the real you, not the version Marissa's trying to sell." Naomi met his gaze, her resolve wavering. She wanted to tell him about Chicago, about the colleague who'd cornered her, the complaint she'd filed, the silence she'd been forced to accept. But the words stuck in her throat. What if he saw her differently, not as the capable assistant he trusted, but as someone broken, someone who'd compromised to survive? She pushed the thought away, focusing on the present. "I need to know what they have," she said. "If Marissa's behind this, she's not working alone. Those texts, they're too specific, too personal." William nodded, pulling out his phone. "I'll get our tech team to trace the number. Burner or not, nothing's untraceable." Before he could dial, Greg burst in, his face pale. "We've got another problem. The board's calling an emergency meeting. They want answers about the leak and about you two." Naomi's stomach dropped. The board, 12 powerful figures who held Harris Corp's future in their hands. She'd met a few at company events, their polite smiles masking calculations. Now they'd be judging her, not just as an employee, but as a threat to the company's stability. William's expression hardened. "When tomorrow morning?" Greg said. "And Marissa's already lobbying. She's framing this as a breach of trust, saying Naomi's presence undermines investor confidence." Naomi clenched her fists. "She's turning my life into a weapon." William turned to her, his voice steady. "Then we disarm her. We go to the board with the truth, your record, your work, everything you've done for this company." Naomi shook her head. "It's not just about my work anymore. They'll want to know about Chicago. And I'm not sure I'm ready to tell that story." William's eyes softened, but he didn't push. "You don't have to. But whatever you decide, I'm with you." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard, a warmth cutting through her fear. She wanted to believe him, to lean into the trust he offered, but the texts loomed like a shadow. She excused herself, stepping into the hallway to clear her head. The corridor was quiet, the hum of the city muffled by thick walls. She pulled out her phone, staring at the latest message. "Tell him, or I will." Her thumb hovered over the reply button. But what could she say? Whoever this was, they knew her secret and they were ready to wield it. She scrolled through her contacts, landing on Jenna, her best friend since college. Jenna had always been her anchor, the one who'd seen her through late-night study sessions and heartbreak. Naomi typed a quick message. "Need to talk. Something's coming up from my past. Can you meet?" Jenna's reply came instantly. "On my way. You're not alone in this." Naomi exhaled a small relief amid the storm. She returned to the office where William was reviewing a stack of documents with Greg. "I've got a friend coming," she said. "She might help me figure this out." William nodded, his expression unreadable. "Good. We need all the allies we can get." An hour later, Jenna arrived, her sneakers squeaking against the marble floor. She hugged Naomi tightly, her voice fierce. "Whatever this is, we'll handle it. Tell me everything." Naomi led her to a corner of the office, away from William and Greg. In hushed tones, she recounted the texts, the leaked document, and the shadow of Chicago. Jenna's eyes widened. "You think Marissa's behind the texts too?" "Maybe," Naomi said. "She's got the access, the motive, but she'd need someone who knows my past, someone from that internship." Jenna frowned, pulling out her phone. "I still have contacts from back then. Let me dig. If someone's feeding her info, we'll find them." Naomi nodded, grateful for Jenna's tenacity. But as they spoke, her phone buzzed again. Another text. Chicago wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. "You'll pay for it." Her heart sank. This wasn't just about exposing her. It was about rewriting her story, twisting her survival into shame. She showed Jenna the message, her voice trembling. "They're not just threatening me. They're trying to make me doubt myself." Jenna's jaw tightened. "They don't know you. You fought through worse than this. We'll find who's doing this, and we'll shut them down." Naomi managed a small smile, drawing strength from her friend's fire. But as she glanced at William, still deep in conversation with Greg, she felt a pang of guilt. He was risking everything, his reputation, his company for her. She owed him the truth, but the fear of losing his trust kept her silent. Greg approached, holding his tablet. "We've got a lead." The encrypted email tied to the leak was routed through a server linked to an old board advisor. Marissa's name keeps coming up, but there's someone else, someone with deeper access to HR records. Naomi's mind raced. Who? Greg hesitated. Robert Harris, William's father. William froze his eyes, snapping to Greg. "My father hasn't touched this company in years." "Maybe not officially," Greg said, but his old login was active the same night the file was accessed. Naomi's breath caught. Robert Harris, the legendary founder of Harris Corp, a man whose shadow still loomed over the company. If he was involved, this wasn't just a personal attack, it was a power play. And Naomi was caught in the crossfire. The revelation about Robert Harris hung in the air, like a storm waiting to break. Naomi stood frozen in William's private office, the city's glow beyond the windows, casting long shadows across the room. Her phone felt heavy in her pocket. The anonymous texts. Chicago wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. "You'll pay for it now," carrying a sharper edge. If Robert Williams' father was involved, this wasn't just a vendetta. It was a calculated move to dismantle everything William and Naomi were building. Her heart pounded, not just from fear, but from the gnawing realization that her past was no longer hers to control. William paced, his usual calm, replaced by a restless energy. My father hasn't set foot in this building in years, he said, his voice low, almost to himself. Why now? Why you? Greg, still clutching his tablet, looked grim. His login accessed sensitive files, including Naomi's. It's not direct proof, but it's enough to raise questions. Marissa's involvement makes sense. She's been circling for a chance to undermine you. But Robert, that's a bigger play. Naomi's mind churned. She'd heard stories about Robert Harris, the ruthless founder who'd built Harris Corp into an empire through sheer will and unrelenting ambition. He was a man who saw emotion as a flaw, loyalty as a luxury. If he viewed Naomi as a threat to his legacy, her presence beside William would be an affront. She swallowed, forcing herself to speak. If he's behind this, he's not just after me. He's testing you, William. William stopped pacing, his eyes meeting hers. Then he's about to learn, I don't break easily. Jenna, sitting on the edge of a leather chair, looked up from her phone. I found something, she said, her voice urgent. A contact from your old internship program in Chicago. They still have records, emails, reports, even a draft of your complaint. If we can get those, we can prove you told the truth back then. Naomi's chest tightened. The thought of revisiting Chicago, of unearthing that summer, when she'd felt so powerless, made her stomach churn. But hiding wasn't an option anymore. Do it, she said quietly. I need to know what they're holding over me. William stepped closer, his voice gentle. You don't have to do this alone, Naomi. Whatever happened back then, it doesn't change who you are now. She wanted to believe him, but the texts had shaken her. They weren't just threats, they were accusations, implying she'd made a choice that could be twisted into guilt. She hadn't told William the full story, not yet. The memory of that night in Chicago, the colleague's unwanted advance, her desperate push to escape the company's dismissal of her complaint, still carried a sting of shame. She'd signed the non-disclosure agreement to survive, to keep her career alive. Now someone was using it to paint her as a liar. I'll tell you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But not here. Not now. William nodded, respecting her silence. When you're ready. For now, we focus on the board meeting tomorrow. We need a strategy. Greg chimed in. We can present your record, Naomi, your performance reviews, your contributions. The board respects results. And if we can tie the leak to Marissa or Robert, we shift the narrative. Naomi shook her head. They'll still ask about Chicago. If I don't address it, they'll assume I'm hiding something. Then we get ahead of it, William said. You control the story. Tell them what you're comfortable sharing, nothing more. She exhaled the weight of his trust, both comforting and heavy. Okay, but we need those records from Jenna's contact. Without them, it's my word against whoever's out there. Jenna nodded, already typing. I'm on it. I'll have something by morning. As the room settled into a tense quiet, Naomi's phone buzzed again. Her heart sank as she pulled it out. Another text from the unknown number. You signed the paper. You chose silence. Now it's time to pay. Attached was a grainy photo, a younger Naomi standing outside her Chicago apartment, her face tense, her eyes glancing over her shoulder. The timestamp was days after the incident, proof someone had been watching her even then. She gasped, the phone slipping slightly in her hand. William was at her side in an instant. What is it? She showed him the screen, her voice shaking. This was taken after I filed the complaint. I thought I was imagining things, feeling watched, seeing shadows. But someone was there. William's jaw clenched, his eyes darkening as he studied the photo. This isn't just a leak. It's harassment. We're calling security now. Naomi shook her head. No. If we escalate, they'll release more. They're waiting for me to panic. Jenna stood, her voice fierce. Then we don't panic. We dig deeper. Whoever's doing this, they're not as clever as they think. That photo's old. There's metadata we can trace. William nodded, his voice tight. I'm getting our tech team on it. No one threatens you, and walks away. Naomi's mind raced. The photo wasn't just a warning. It was a reminder of her vulnerability, a moment when she'd felt small, powerless. She'd spent years rebuilding herself, proving her worth at Harris Corp through late nights and flawless work. But now her past was being weaponized, and the board meeting loomed like a trial. Let's prepare for tomorrow, she said, forcing her voice to steady. I'll draft a statement, something short, honest. I won't let them define me. William gave her a small, proud smile. That's my Naomi. The words warmed her, but the fear lingered. As Greg and Jenna worked on their tasks, Greg coordinating with security, Jenna reaching out to her. Chicago contact. Naomi sat at the desk, pulling up her employment file. She scanned her performance reviews, each one, glowing exceptional attention to detail, strategic thinker, invaluable asset. She'd earned every word, but would it be enough? Her thoughts drifted to the board. She'd seen them at galas, their polished exteriors, masking ruthless calculations. Marissa's influence was strong. She'd been a key investor before stepping back, and her connections ran deep. If Robert Harris was involved, his shadow would loom even larger. Naomi knew the board wouldn't just judge her work. They'd judge her presence beside William, questioning whether she belonged in their world. Jenna's phone pinged, breaking the silence. Got a reply, she said, her eyes scanning the screen. My contact found an email chain from the internship program. It confirms you filed a complaint, Naomi, and it names the colleague Ryan Caldwell. They buried it, but the email's time-stamped and verified. Naomi's breath caught. Ryan Caldwell. The name alone sent a chill down her spine. His charming smile, his insistence on mentoring her the night he'd followed her home. She'd pushed him away, screamed for help, but the company had dismissed her, protecting their star analyst. The email was a lifeline, proof she hadn't lied, but it also meant reopening a wound she'd tried to forget. William noticed her expression. Naomi. It's him, she said quietly. The guy from Chicago. If they're digging this up, they'll try to twist it. William's hand found hers, warm and grounding. They won't. We have the truth, and we'll use it. Naomi nodded, but the photo and texts lingered in her mind. Someone had been watching her then, and they were watching her now. The board meeting would be her chance to fight back, but it would also expose her to a world ready to tear her apart. The air in William's private office felt thick with anticipation, the city's hum beyond the windows, a distant echo to the storm brewing within. Naomi clutched the edge of the desk, her eyes fixed on the email. Jenna had uncovered an official record from her Chicago internship, time-stamped and verified, confirming her complaint against Ryan Caldwell. It was a lifeline, proof that she'd spoken up when the world tried to silence her, but it also felt like a blade sharp enough to cut open old wounds. The anonymous texts. Chicago wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. You'll pay for it. And the grainy photo of her outside her old apartment loomed in her mind, a reminder that someone was determined to twist her truth. William stood by the window, his phone pressed to his ear, coordinating with the tech team to trace the anonymous number. His voice was low, controlled, but Naomi could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his free hand clenched into a fist. Greg sat at a corner table, his tablet glowing with updates on the board's emergency meeting, now just hours away. Jenna, still fired up, was cross-referencing the email with other records, determined to build an airtight case. Naomi's heart raced. The board meeting would be a crucible, a chance to reclaim her narrative or lose everything she'd built. She'd spent years at Harris Corp, proving her worth, organizing high-stakes meetings, streamlining operations, earning quiet nods from colleagues. But now her past was a weapon, and Marissa Dean, possibly backed by Robert Harris, was wielding it with precision. Jenna looked up, her eyes bright. "I've got more." The email chain includes a response from HR admitting they handled your complaint internally to protect the company's reputation. It's not an apology, but it's evidence they buried it. Naomi exhaled a mix of relief and dread. That's something. But if Marissa or Robert has this, they'll spin it to make me look complicit. William hung up his call and turned to her, his expression fierce. They can try, but we're not playing defense. You're going to tell your story on your terms. Naomi shook her head, her voice tight. The board won't care about my story. They'll see a liability, someone who brings drama to their doorstep. Then we make them see you, William said, stepping closer. The woman who turned our last quarter around, who caught errors no one else saw, who earned every inch of her place here. They can't ignore that. His words steadied her, but the fear lingered. She hadn't told him the full story of Chicago, not the details of Ryan's pursuit. The fear of being followed, the way HR's dismissal, had made her question her own voice. She wanted to, but the board meeting loomed, and time was running out. Greg interrupted, his tablet buzzing. The tech team traced the texts. They're coming from a burner phone, but it pinged near Marissa's office last night. It's not proof, but it's close. Naomi's stomach twisted. She's not just leaking files. She's stalking me. William's eyes darkened. We'll deal with her. But first the board. We need a plan. Naomi nodded, forcing her focus. I'll speak at the meeting. I'll tell them about Chicago, not everything, but enough to show I'm not hiding. If I don't, they'll assume the worst. Jenna grinned. That's my girl. Own it. They spent the next hour preparing. Naomi drafted a statement, short but unflinching, outlining her contributions to Harris Corp and acknowledging the Chicago incident without diving into painful details. William reviewed it, suggesting small tweaks to keep it professional but human. Greg compiled a dossier of her achievements metrics, showing increased efficiency, glowing performance reviews, emails from clients praising her work. It was a shield, but Naomi knew it wouldn't stop every arrow. As dawn broke, casting a soft glow over the city, Naomi's phone buzzed again. She braced herself, expecting another threat. Instead, it was a message from an old colleague in Chicago, forwarded by Jenna's contact. I kept a copy of your complaint form. It's yours if you need it. Attached was a scanned document, her own handwriting staring back at her, detailing Ryan's actions and her plea for justice. It was raw, vulnerable, but undeniable proof of her truth. Naomi's eyes stung, but she blinked back the tears. This changes everything, she said, showing it to William and Jenna. William read it, his jaw tight. You were brave then, and you're braver now. We'll use this if we have to. Jenna nodded. We can send it to the board anonymously. Let them see the truth before Marissa twists it. No, Naomi said, her voice firm. I'm done letting others tell my story. I'll present it myself. William looked at her, pride flickering in his eyes. Then let's get ready. The boardroom was a fortress of glass and steel, its long table surrounded by 12 chairs, each occupied by a figure whose decision could reshape Naomi's future. She stood at the entrance. Her blazer pressed her curls, neatly pinned, clutching a folder with the Chicago document and her statement. William stood beside her, his suit crisp, his presence a quiet reassurance. Marissa Dean was already seated at the far end, her smile sharp, her eyes gleaming with confidence. Miriam Cho, the board chair, called the meeting to order. We're here to address concerns about recent leaks and their impact on Harris Corp's leadership, she said, her voice calm but authoritative. Miss Lewis, Mr. Harris, the floor is yours. Naomi stepped forward, her heart pounding, but her resolve unbreakable. "Thank you," she began, her voice clear. "I know you've seen the headlines, the leaked document about an incident from my past. I'm here to tell you the truth, not to defend myself, but to show you who I am." She laid out her contributions to Harris Corp projects she'd led, deals she'd supported, the countless hours she'd poured into the company. Then she addressed Chicago. "Years ago, during an internship, I reported a colleague for inappropriate behavior. The company dismissed my complaint, prioritizing their reputation over justice. I was silenced, but I moved forward. That experience shaped me not as a victim, but as someone who learned to fight for what's right." The room was silent, the board members' faces a mix of surprise and contemplation. Marissa's smile faltered, her fingers tapping restlessly on the table. Naomi placed the Chicago document on the table, her handwriting stark against the page. "This is my complaint, filed and ignored. I'm not hiding it, because I'm not ashamed of standing up for myself." William spoke next, his voice steady. "Naomi's integrity is why she's here. The leaks are an attempt to undermine her, and by extension, this company's values. I stand by her, not just personally, but as a leader who's made us stronger." Miriam nodded, her expression unreadable. "We'll review the evidence and deliberate." "Thank you, Miss Lewis." As they left the boardroom, Naomi felt a strange lightness. She'd faced her past, not on someone else's terms, but her own. William touched her arm, his voice low. "You were incredible." She smiled faintly. "I just hope they believe me." Before he could respond, her phone buzzed. Another text. "You think one speech fixes everything? Chicago's just the start." Naomi's blood ran cold. Whoever was behind this wasn't done, and they were getting bolder. Naomi's heart thudded as she stared at the latest anonymous text. "You think one speech fixes everything? Chicago's just the start." The words were a cold slap, a reminder that her moment of courage in the boardroom hadn't ended the fight. She stood in the quiet corridor outside the boardroom, the glass walls reflecting her tense expression. William was beside her, his presence a steady anchor, but his eyes were fixed on her phone, his jaw tight with barely contained anger. The board's deliberation was underway, and while Naomi had laid her truth bare, the threat of more secrets being unearthed loomed like a shadow. "We need to find who's sending these." William said, his voice low but resolute. "This isn't just about leaks anymore. It's personal." Naomi nodded, slipping her phone into her pocket. "It's Marissa," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. She was too confident in there, like she's holding another card. William's eyes narrowed. If she's behind this, she's not acting alone. My father's login was used, but he's too careful to leave a trail. Marissa's the one with the motive. She's been waiting for a chance to take me down. Jenna emerged from the elevator, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. She held a USB drive, her expression a mix of triumph and urgency. "I got something," she said, handing it to Naomi. "My contact in Chicago sent more files, internal memos from the internship program. They show Ryan Caldwell was flagged for multiple complaints, not just yours. The company covered it up to protect him." Naomi's breath caught. The weight of knowing others had suffered in silence was both validating and crushing. "Why didn't they do anything?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jenna's eyes darkened. "Money, power, same old story. But this proves you weren't alone, Naomi. And it proves they lied." William took the drive, his fingers brushing Naomi's as he did. "This is leverage," he said. "If Marissa's using Chicago to discredit you, we can turn it back on her. Show the board she's manipulating the truth." Naomi hesitated, The idea of exposing the internship program's failures felt right, but it also meant dragging her pain into the open again. She thought of the board's faces, some sympathetic, others skeptical, and wondered if they'd see her as a whistleblower or a troublemaker. But she'd spent too long letting others write her story. "Let's do it," she said. "But I want to confront Marissa first. Alone." William's brow furrowed. "Naomi, she's dangerous." "If she's behind the texts, I know," Naomi interrupted, her voice firm. "But I need to look her in the eye. If she's orchestrating this, I want her to know I'm not backing down." Jenna gave a fierce nod. "I'll set it up. I know someone in her office who can get us a meeting." William looked at Naomi, his expression a mix of worry and admiration. "Be careful. She's not just a board advisor, she's a strategist, and she plays dirty." Naomi managed a small smile. "So do I when I have to." An hour later, Naomi stood outside a sleek conference room in a downtown hotel, a neutral ground, arranged through Jenna's contact. Marissa had agreed to meet, her response suspiciously swift, as if she'd been expecting the challenge. Naomi smoothed her blazer, her folder of evidence tucked under her arm. She'd prepared a script not to plead, but to demand answers. Her heart pounded, but she channeled the fear into resolve. This wasn't just about her, it was about every person, silenced by power. Marissa was already seated when Naomi entered, her posture relaxed, her smile sharp as glass. "Miss Lewis?" she said, her voice smooth. "I wondered when you'd come looking for me." Naomi sat across from her, keeping her expression neutral. "Let's skip the pleasantries. You're behind the leaks, the texts, the photo from Chicago." Why, Marissa's smile didn't waver. "You're quick to accuse. Do you have proof? Or just a hunch?" Naomi slid the folder across the table, opening it, to reveal the Chicago memos. "These prove my complaint was buried. They also show Ryan Caldwell's history, which you conveniently left out when you leaked my file. And we traced the texts to a burner phone near your office." Marissa's eyes flicked to the documents, her composure slipping for a fraction of a second. "Impressive," she said. "But you're missing the bigger picture. This isn't about Chicago, it's about trust. The board, the investors, they don't care about your sob story. They care about stability, and you're a risk." Naomi leaned forward, her voice steady. "I'm a risk, because I don't bow to people like you. You're not protecting the company, you're protecting your own agenda." "What is it, power, revenge?" Marissa's smile tightened. "You think you're clever, but you're out of your depth. William's too emotional, too soft. He needs someone who can play the game, not someone who brings drama." Naomi's anger flared, but she kept it in check. "You don't get to decide who stands beside him, and you don't get to rewrite my past to fit your narrative." Marissa leaned back, her fingers tapping the table. "You're bold, I'll give you that. But boldness won't save you when the board votes. They'll see you as a liability, and William will fall with you." Naomi stood, gathering her folder. "If they vote me out, it'll be for my work, not your lies. And if you send one more text, I'll make sure every investor knows you're the one destabilizing this company." Marissa's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. Naomi walked out, her heart racing, but her head high. She'd faced the dragon and walked away unscathed, but the battle wasn't over. Back at Harris Corp, Naomi found William and Jenna in the private office reviewing the board's agenda. She recounted the meeting, her voice steady. "Marissa's rattled, but she's not done. She's betting on the board siding with her." William nodded, his expression grim. "Then we make sure they don't. The Chicago evidence is solid. We'll present it to show you were targeted, not complicit." Jenna held up her phone. "I've got one more thing. My contact found a digital log from the internship program. It shows someone accessed your file 2 weeks ago using a retired HR login. Guess who had access to those credentials? Naomi's breath caught. Robert. No, Jenna said. Marissa. She was a consultant for that company before joining Harris Corp. She's been digging into your past for longer than we thought. William's eyes darkened. She's been planning this since you started working here. Naomi's mind raced. Marissa's vendetta wasn't just about William. It was personal, a calculated strike to keep Naomi out of a world she deemed exclusive. But Naomi wasn't the same woman who'd signed that non-disclosure agreement in Chicago. She was stronger, fiercer, and she had allies. We go to the board with everything she said. The memos, the login logs, the texts. Let them see who's really pulling the strings. William took her hand, his grip warm and steady. We'll do it together. As they prepared for the board's verdict, Naomi's phone buzzed again. She braced herself, but this time it was a message from an unknown ally. Check Marissa's emails. You'll find what you need. Her heart skipped. Someone was fighting for her, and the tide was turning. The faint hum of the city filtered through the windows of William's private office, but inside the atmosphere crackled with urgency. Naomi sat at a sleek glass table, her laptop open, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The latest message from an unknown ally. Check Marissa's emails. You'll find what you need had ignited a spark of hope, but also a surge of apprehension. The board's decision loomed, and with Marissa Dean's machinations exposed, Naomi knew this was her chance to reclaim control. The anonymous texts, the leaked documents, the shadow of her Chicago past. They were all part of a carefully orchestrated campaign, and Marissa was at its heart. William stood across the room, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in clipped tones to the tech team. I need access to those email servers now, he said, his voice sharp. If there's a trail, we're following it. He hung up, turning to Naomi with a look that blended determination and concern. They're working on it. If Marissa's emails show she's been orchestrating this, we'll have her. Jenna, perched on a chair with her own laptop, was already digging through the digital log from the Chicago internship program. Marissa's old consulting role gave her access to their HR system. She said, her eyes scanning the screen. She pulled your file months ago, Naomi. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment attack. She's been planning it. Naomi's stomach tightened. The idea that Marissa had been watching her, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, was unnerving. But the anger rising in her chest was stronger than the fear. She'd spent too long proving herself at Harris Corp in Chicago, in every room where she'd been underestimated. She wasn't about to let Marissa rewrite her story. Then we expose her. Naomi said, her voice steady. If those emails show she's been manipulating the board or leaking my file, we take it to them directly. William nodded, but his expression was cautious. We need to be strategic. Marissa's got allies on the board, people who trust her judgment. If we accuse her without ironclad proof, it could backfire. Jenna's laptop pinged, breaking the tension. Got it, she said, her voice triumphant. The tech team cracked the server. There's an email chain from Marissa to an unknown recipient dated 2 weeks ago. It mentions your Chicago file and instructions to amplify the narrative through anonymous leaks. Naomi leaned over, scanning the email. The language was careful coded but damning. The assistant's past is a liability. Use the attached file to cast doubt. Keep it anonymous. Attached was Naomi's employment record, the same one leaked to the press. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with clarity. This was the proof they needed. William's eyes darkened as he read over her shoulder. She's done. We take this to the board now. Naomi held up a hand. Not yet. I want to do this my way. If we just hand over the emails, it's another fight. I want to show them who I am, not just what Marissa's done. William studied her, a small smile tugging at his lips. You're calling the shots. What's the plan? Naomi took a deep breath, her mind racing. We go public not to the press, but to the company. A live broadcast internal to every employee at Harris Corp. I'll tell my story, show the evidence, and let them see the truth. Marissa's counting on secrecy. Let's take that away from her. Jenna grinned, already pulling up the company's internal streaming platform. Bold. I love it. I'll set it up. Give me an hour. William's smile widened, pride evident in his eyes. You're rewriting the rules, Naomi. Let's do this. The next hour was a blur of preparation. Naomi drafted a script, not a defense, but a declaration of her truth. She included the Chicago complaint, the email from HR confirming the cover-up, and now Marissa's leaked emails. Jenna coordinated with the tech team to ensure the broadcast was secure, while William worked with Greg to prepare a follow-up statement for the board. Naomi's hands trembled as she rehearsed, but each word felt like a step toward reclaiming her power. When the broadcast began, Naomi stood in a small studio on the 40th floor, a single camera trained on her. The red light blinked on, and she felt the weight of thousands of eyes, every employee at Harris Corp, from interns to executives, watching. She took a deep breath, her voice clear and unwavering. My name is Naomi Lewis, she began. For 3 years, I've worked as an assistant at Harris Corp, giving my all to this company. Recently, my name has been dragged through headlines, my past twisted to paint me as something I'm not. I'm here to set the record straight. She recounted her journey, not just her work at Harris Corp, but the summer in Chicago. The complaint she'd filed against Ryan Caldwell, the silence she'd been forced into. She held up the email from HR, her voice steady. I spoke up then, and I'm speaking up now. Someone has been using my past to undermine me, leaking private files, sending threats. But I'm not here to hide. She displayed Marissa's email on the screen, the words stark and undeniable. This is the truth. A board advisor has been orchestrating a campaign to discredit me, to destabilize this company. I'm not asking for pity. I'm asking for fairness. Judge me for my work, not for lies spun by someone with an agenda. Naomi paused, her eyes locking onto the camera. I've spent my life proving I belong, not just here, but in every room where I've been told I don't fit. If my story resonates with even one of you, know this. Your voice matters. Don't let anyone take it away. She ended the broadcast, the silence in the studio deafening. Jenna rushed forward, hugging her tightly. You nailed it, she whispered. They're listening. William stepped closer, his eyes glassy with pride. You didn't just tell your story, you changed the conversation. Naomi's phone buzzed, not with a threat this time, but with a flood of messages from colleagues, support stories of their own struggles, gratitude for her courage. The internal chat platform lit up, employees sharing her broadcast, praising her honesty. But before she could process it, Greg burst in his face, pale. The board's seen the broadcast, he said. They're calling an immediate vote. Marissa's trying to spin it, saying you're manipulating the narrative. Naomi's heart sank, but her resolve held. Let her try. The truth's out there now. William took her hand, his grip warm and steady. We're not done yet. The board's vote will decide everything, but whatever happens, you've already won. As they prepared to face the board again, Naomi's phone buzzed with a new message, not anonymous, but from an employee she barely knew. Thank you for speaking up. I was silenced once too. The words hit her like a wave, a reminder that her fight wasn't just for herself. She looked at William, drawing strength from his unwavering support. But as they stepped into the elevator, a new alert flashed on Greg's tablet. Marissa's just submitted a new document to the board, he said, his voice tense. It's an old email from Chicago claiming you withdrew your complaint voluntarily. Naomi's blood ran cold. The lie was clever, designed to undermine her broadcast. But she wasn't the same woman who'd signed that agreement in Chicago. She was ready to fight, and this time, she had the truth, and William by her side. The elevator to the boardroom hummed softly, but the tension inside was palpable. Naomi stood shoulder to shoulder with William, her folder of evidence, Chicago memos, Marissa's leaked emails, and the digital log, tying her to the anonymous texts tucked under her arm. The latest blow, a forged email claiming Naomi had voluntarily withdrawn her Chicago complaint, sat heavy in her mind. Marissa Dean's final gambit was clever, designed to cast doubt on Naomi's broadcast and paint her as a manipulator. But Naomi wasn't the same woman who'd once shrunk under pressure. Her live address to Harris Corp's employees had shifted something not just in the company, but in her. She was done hiding. William glanced at her, his eyes steady. "You've got this," he said, his voice low but firm. "The truth is on our side." Naomi nodded, drawing strength from his presence. The broadcast had been a risk, but the flood of support from colleagues, messages of solidarity, stories of their own, silenced struggles had shown her she wasn't alone. Now the board's vote would determine whether her truth was enough to secure her place at Harris Corp, or if Marissa's lies would prevail. The elevator doors opened, revealing the boardroom's stark elegance glass walls, a long mahogany table, and 12 chairs filled with faces ranging from sympathetic to skeptical. Marissa sat at the far end, her posture composed, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Miriam Cho, the board chair, stood, her expression neutral. "We've reviewed the broadcast and the new document submitted by Miss Dean," she said. "Miss Lewis, Mr. Harris, please address the board." Naomi stepped forward, her heart steady despite the weight of the moment. "Thank you," she said, her voice clear. "I stand by everything I said in the broadcast. The evidence I presented, memos from my internship. Marissa's emails, the digital logs, proves I've been targeted. The new document claiming I withdrew my complaint is a fabrication. I have the original records time-stamped and verified, showing I was pressured to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I didn't choose silence. I was forced into it." She placed the folder on the table, sliding it toward Miriam. "My work at Harris Corp speaks for itself. I've led initiatives, saved deals, and earned the trust of my colleagues. If you doubt my integrity, judge me by my actions here, not a distorted version of my past." William spoke next, his tone calm but commanding. "Naomi's not just an asset to this company. She's its future. The leaks and threats were designed to undermine her, but they've only shown her strength. Marissa Dean accessed confidential files and orchestrated this campaign. The evidence is clear, and I ask the board to hold her accountable." Marissa stood, her voice smooth but edged. "This is a deflection. The issue isn't my actions. It's whether Naomi's presence compromises this company's stability. Her past, her relationship with William, it's all a liability. The investors agree." Naomi met Marissa's gaze, unflinching. "The only liability here is someone who uses lies to cling to power. You didn't just leak my file, you tried to erase my voice. But I'm still standing." A murmur rippled through the room. Miriam raised a hand for silence. "We've seen the evidence. We'll vote on 2 motions first, whether to remove Miss Dean from her advisory role. Second, whether to retain Miss Lewis in her current position." Naomi's breath caught as the board deliberated, their faces unreadable. William's hand brushed hers under the table, a quiet gesture of support. One by one, hands went up for Marissa's removal, 8, then 10, then 12. Unanimous. Marissa's composure cracked, her lips tightening, as she realized her gambit had failed. Miriam turned to the second motion. All in favor of retaining Miss Lewis' hands rose again, slower this time, but steady. 9, 10, 11. One holdout, a stern-faced investor, hesitated before raising his hand. Motion carried, Miriam said. Miss Lewis, you remain with Harris Corp. Naomi exhaled, a weight lifting from her shoulders. But before she could process the victory, Miriam continued. We've also reviewed your contributions, Miss Lewis. Several board members have proposed a new role, Director of Strategic Initiatives. Your leadership in this crisis has shown you're ready. Naomi blinked, stunned. The offer wasn't just a reprieve, it was a recognition of her worth earned through years of quiet diligence and one bold stand. She glanced at William, who gave her a proud nod. I'd be honored, she said, her voice steady but warm. As the board dispersed, Marissa stood, her eyes cold. This isn't over, she said softly, brushing past Naomi. You've won a battle, not the war. Naomi held her gaze. I'm not fighting a war. I'm building a future. Marissa left without another word, her heels echoing in the hallway. William turned to Naomi, his expression soft. You didn't just keep your job. You changed the game. Naomi smiled, but the victory felt bittersweet. The board's approval was a milestone, but Marissa's parting words lingered, and the anonymous texts hadn't stopped. She checked her phone, finding no new messages, but the silence felt ominous. Someone was still out there watching. Back in William's office, Jenna was waiting, her laptop open. The broadcast's gone viral internally, she said, grinning. Employees are sharing it, posting their own stories. You've started something, Naomi. Naomi's heart swelled, but the weight of the fight remained. It's not enough, she said. Marissa's out, but someone's still pulling strings. Those texts they mentioned Chicago's just the start. William frowned, pulling out his phone. I've got security cross-checking every access log from the past month. If Robert's involved, we'll find him. Naomi nodded, but a new idea sparked. What if we don't wait? I want to reach out to Ryan Caldwell. If he's connected to this, I need to know why. Jenna's eyes widened. The guy from Chicago, Naomi, that's risky. He's not exactly a friend. I know, Naomi said, her voice firm. But I'm tired of being hunted. If he has answers, I'm getting them. William hesitated, his concern evident. You don't have to face him alone. I can come with you. Naomi shook her head. This is my fight, but I'll need your help to set it up quietly. William nodded, respecting her resolve. I'll make it happen, but promise me you'll be careful. I promise, she said, her eyes meeting his. The trust between them was a lifeline stronger than any threat. That evening, Naomi sat alone in her apartment, the city's lights flickering outside. She opened her laptop, drafting an email to Ryan Caldwell, her fingers steady despite the memories his name stirred. I know someone's using Chicago against me. Meet me. Let's end this. She hit send, her heart racing but her mind clear. As she closed her laptop, her phone buzzed, not a text, but a notification from the company's internal platform. A post from an employee she'd never met. Your broadcast gave me courage to speak up about my own story. Thank you. Naomi's eyes stung, not with fear, but with purpose. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, she was fighting for everyone who'd been silenced. And no matter what came next, she was ready. Naomi stood on the balcony of a quiet townhouse, the city's skyline shimmering in the distance under a late summer sunset. The air was warm, carrying the faint hum of traffic and the promise of a new beginning. 6 months had passed since the boardroom showdown, since she'd faced Marissa Dean's schemes and reclaimed her narrative. The anonymous texts had stopped the shadow of Chicago, no longer a weapon against her. Now, as Director of Strategic Initiatives at Harris Corp, Naomi was no longer the assistant in the background. She was a leader, her voice shaping the company's future. Yet standing here, she felt something deeper than victory: peace. William joined her, 2 mugs of tea in hand. His suit jacket discarded, his shirt sleeves rolled up. He handed her a mug, the steam curling in the evening air. "Chamomile," he said with a small smile. "I'm learning." Naomi took the mug, her fingers brushing his, a quiet warmth passing between them. "You're getting better," she teased, her voice soft but steady. The townhouse, a private retreat William had offered as a shared space, wasn't a symbol of wealth, but of possibility, a place where they could build something together, away from headlines and boardrooms. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind. After the board's vote to retain her and remove Marissa, Naomi had thrown herself into her new role. She'd launched a scholarship initiative for underrepresented students, inspired by her own journey through late-night shifts and relentless ambition. The program, named Horizon Fund, was already changing lives, with applications pouring in from across the country. Naomi had poured her heart into it, ensuring every detail reflected her belief in second chances. But the victory hadn't come without scars. Marissa's final warning, "This isn't over," had lingered, though her influence had crumbled. Security had traced the last anonymous text to a burner phone linked to one of her former assistants, a desperate attempt to keep the pressure on. The assistant had confessed, revealing Marissa's plan to destabilize William's leadership by targeting Naomi. With the evidence, public Marissa had quietly resigned her remaining advisory roles, her reputation tarnished. Robert Harris, William's father, had stayed silent, his involvement unproven, but his shadow fading. Naomi's confrontation with Ryan Caldwell had been the final piece. She'd met him in a neutral coffee shop, her folder of evidence at her side. He'd been smug at first, dangling a flash drive with old footage from Chicago, claiming it could clarify her story. But Naomi had been unflinching, presenting the memos and HR emails that exposed his history of complaints. "You don't control me anymore," she'd said, taking the drive and walking away. She'd released an edited version of the footage with a statement framing it as proof of her truth, not his lies. The response had been overwhelming support from colleagues, strangers, and survivors who saw their own stories in hers. Now, as Naomi sipped her tea, she felt the weight of those battles lifting. The townhouse balcony, with its simple iron railing and view of the city, was a reminder that she'd fought for this moment, not just for her career, but for her right to exist unapologetically. William leaned against the railing, his eyes on the horizon. "You've changed this company," he said quietly. "The board's talking about transparency policies, diversity initiatives, all because of you." Naomi shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "It wasn't just me. You made space for me even when it cost you." He turned to her, his expression serious. "It didn't cost me anything. You showed me what matters, building something real, not just an empire." She looked at him, her heart full. Their relationship had grown in the quiet moments, late-night talks about their dreams, shared laughter over burnt dinners, the way he listened when she spoke of her fears. It wasn't the dramatic kiss of their early days, but something deeper, grounded in trust. William reached into his pocket, pulling out a small folded blueprint. "I've got something for you," he said, unfolding it to reveal a sketch of a house not grand, but warm, with wide windows and a garden. "It's not a ring," he added quickly, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "But it's a start, a place for us if you want it." Naomi's breath caught as she traced the lines of the sketch. "Our rules," she asked, her voice soft. "Our way," he said, his eyes meeting hers. No headlines, no boardrooms. Just us. She set her mug down, leaning in to kiss him, not for show, but for them. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "Let's build it." The next morning, Naomi walked into her new office at Harris Corp, a space that felt like hers. Clean lines, a vase of fresh lilies, a framed photo from her first company event, where she'd stood in the background unnoticed, but determined. Now, she was at the forefront leading initiatives that reshaped the company's culture. The Horizon Fund was her proudest achievement, with its first recipients set to start college in the fall. She'd already received letters from students, their words echoing her own struggles and dreams. A soft knock broke her thoughts. Jenna stepped in holding a tablet. "The fund's trending online," she said, grinning. "People are calling it a game changer." "You're a hero, Naomi." Naomi laughed, shaking her head. "I'm just doing what I wish someone had done for me." Jenna's expression softened. "You're doing more than that. You're showing people they can fight and win." Naomi nodded, her eyes drifting to the photo on her desk. It wasn't just a memory. It was a reminder of the courage she'd found, the voice she'd reclaimed. The board's support had solidified her role, but it was the employees' response, their stories, their trust, that had truly changed her. William appeared at the door, a coffee in hand. "Ready for the scholarship review?" He asked, his tone light, but his eyes warm. "Only if you've memorized my order," she teased, taking the cup. "Cream, no sugar." He grinned. "Nailed it." They walked to the meeting room, where a small team waited to review the Horizon Fund applications. Naomi led the discussion, her voice confident, as she outlined the selection criteria: resilience, ambition, heart. The team listened, their respect evident. For the first time, Naomi felt not just seen, but heard. As the meeting ended, Eleanor Harris appeared, her presence as commanding as ever. Naomi braced herself, expecting a warning, but Eleanor's expression was softer, almost curious. "Miss Lewis," she said, "the fund is impressive. It's bold." Naomi nodded, cautious. "Thank you. It's personal." Eleanor's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "I misjudged you. You're not what I expected, but you're what this company needs." The words, though restrained, hit Naomi deeply. She didn't need Eleanor's approval, but the acknowledgement was a quiet victory. "I'm here to stay," she said simply. Eleanor nodded, then left, her heels clicking softly. William squeezed Naomi's hand. "You just got the Eleanor Harris seal of approval. That's rare." Naomi laughed, the sound light and free. "I'll take it." Later at the townhouse, Naomi and William sat on the balcony, the blueprint spread between them. They talked not of battles or boards, but of dreams, a garden for her, a study for him, a home for them. The city sparkled below, no longer a threat, but a canvas. Naomi leaned against him, her heart steady. She'd fought for her truth, her place, her love, and now she was ready to build.